Doing great. Little bug spray, some mosquitoes out here. Good morning. Who's this? She likes that mosquito spray. Probably like all of us. Thank you all for coming out. Really appreciate it.
Hello. Can you guys hear me all right? Am I coming through okay? Am I too loud? You can tell me the hush. Now, as you can see, I am not better over. Let me walk around here for 1 second. Sorry, guys. Ignore it. Now, as you guys can see, I am not better over. But I do have the honor of introducing to you guys a very, very important person who fought a really good fight and hopefully has a bright future in the state of Texas. But I will say my name is Dominic Hardaway. I am with Powered by People. And the person I want to introduce to you guys today, her name is Jana Sanchez. And she was a candidate for Texas seat. Now, Jana, she is a resident in this district, is her home, and she fought an amazing fight, and I think she has an amazing future. But I'm not going to tell your story for you. I think you're the best person to do it. So, one more time, if I can get a big hand clap and introduce to everyone, Ms. Jana Sanchez. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. It's so great to be here in my hometown. Sit, JoJo. Stay. I am just going to quickly introduce Luke Warford. If y'all haven't met him, he's the head of operations for the Texas Democratic Party. He's the man who's helping us have a great ground game in this coming cycle. So round of applause, please, for Luke Warford.
We're going to test this and see if this works. Hey everyone, my name is Luke Warford. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at the Texas Democratic Party. It is good to be in Ellis County. Who's excited to hear from Beto O'Rourke this morning? Now, we've been on the road with Powered by People for the last few days, and it keeps making me think back to 2018 when Beto ran for Senate, right? And there was so much energy. His volunteers are amazing. They do incredible work across the state. And I think we can clap for that. I think one of the things that stands out for me about that race is not just how it went, but also what happened afterwards, right? The continuation of the momentum, the continuation of the excitement, the continuation by Powered by People and all of y'all's amazing volunteers to continue to do work across the state, not just in major cities, has truly been inspiring, and I think has changed the way that we think about working statewide at the State Democratic Party. So just want to say thank you all for that, and thank you to Powered by People and Beto. One quick thing before I pass the mic back. As many of y'all might know, yesterday we announced a Project Texas, which is our major voter registration plan for the 2022 cycle. And just to talk quickly about Project Texas, voter registration has always been a priority for us, but I think something that is different this year is just how important doing voter registration in communities across the state, in counties like Ellis County, is for the party. And so I'm here, and we're traveling around on this tour as well with Powered by People to tell folks in Ellis County and in Midland and in Odessa that we're going to be registering voters there, and that in order to hit our goals, in order to win statewide, we have to do the work here in Ellis County. And that's going to take all of you. if you haven't signed in, I'm being directed to please sign in on the sign-up forms.
This is in Ellis County. Ellis County Democrats.
Amazing. Please sign in on the Powered by People forms as well, and the Ellis County Democratic Party. Huge thank you to the Ellis County Democratic Party and Powered by People for doing incredible work here. Sign in both places. It's incredible voter registration work happening with those groups. And I just want to say thank you all so very much. It's great to be here, and I will pass the mic back to Jalen Sanchez.
Thank you, Luke. I think we all know there are candidates that excite voters and come really close to winning. Unfortunately, they often go back to their old lives and leave on the field all the gains that were made. And then there's Beto. When Beto ran for U.S. Senate in 2018, the excitement was so thick you could slice it with a knife. He came to all 254 counties of Texas and to small towns like this to overflowing crowds. We were all there. And he came very close to winning. He came closer than any Democrat has come in a generation in Texas. And when he almost won Cancun Cruise, he kept on working hard for Texans. He went and he set up Powered by People. And if y'all don't know, Powered by People has registered tens of thousands of Texans. And they've mobilized hundreds of thousands of Texans in races around the state. And they've done everything from making sure people got their vaccines to making sure people were okay when the power went out. And now Beto is fighting the most regressive voter suppression campaign for at least a generation in our country. And he needs our help. And I know it's probably selfish because Beto does so much for saving our democracy, so much good work. But I personally want to see his name on the ballot again soon. Beto is a fourth-generation Texan, born and raised in El Paso. He's married to Amy O'Rourke, and together they're raising their children, Ulysses, Molly, and Henry, and a Labrador Retriever, very similar to my JoJo here. She sends her regards. And I know that he doesn't need an introduction, but it's my extreme honor to introduce you to a great patriot and warrior for democracy, Beto O'Rourke.
Good morning. Buenos dias.
Buenos dias.
Excellent Spanish. Excellent Spanish. Janelyn, thank you for introducing me. Thank you even more for pursuing public service in a part of the state, a part of the country that's not easy to do this as a Democrat. That involves talking to people who may not always share your political point of view, who may come to a different conclusion on the issues that matter most to all of us, but you got out there, you got after it, you listened to them, you brought new people in, you helped to register voters. One person at a time, you're helping to change this community for the better, and not for Democrats, to be clear. And I hope there are Republicans and independents as well as Democrats among us right now at this deeply divided, highly polarized moment in our country's history. What we need more than anything else is to find ways to come together, some common ground, an ability to see each other and literally look into each other's eyes, which we haven't been able to do for more than a year during this pandemic, and find what unites us. And I know that that's what motivated you in your pursuit of office. And so I'm grateful to you and grateful that you helped to bring us all together here on this beautiful day. I know you all may get kind of tired of the rain and the humidity that follows, but for a kid from El Paso, Texas, which is in the middle of the Chihuahuan desert, this feels kind of special. It feels like I'm both walking and swimming as I make my way over to the gazebo. And This community, and you know that I've been here before because many of you were with me before, is just so beautiful, and it is so striking to me as we make the drive south from Dallas, where we held a meeting just like this last night at Paul Quinn College, just how gorgeous Ellis County is, just how gorgeous Waxahachie is. And so thank you for bringing us in, and thank you for being so kind to your friends from El Paso. As many of you know, I served in Congress for 6 years. I was elected in 2012, had the high honor of serving on the House Veterans Affairs Committee and the House Armed Services Committee. In other words, doing my best for all those who did their best for this country, who put their lives on the line literally for America, and were very willing to lose it for this country. And we're not much more than a week past Memorial Day, where we thanked all of those and their families who paid the ultimate price for this country. Many of you, and let's thank those veterans right now, right? Thank you, sir, for reminding us to do that. I remember, flying to D.C. every single week. So to fly to D.C., you go from El Paso to DFW, you get on another plane, you go to Reagan Airport in D.C. You get off, go do your work for 4 or 5 days, get back on a plane, 2 flights, you come back home. And Amy and I are raising these 3 little kids, Ulysses, Molly, and Henry, and there's a constant tension over the 6 years that I was in the House of Representatives between the job and the avocation that we pursued and this family that we love and we want to keep together and with whom I want to spend as much time as possible. And I remember long conversations with Ulysses, our oldest. Hey, Dad, why do you want to do this job that takes you away from us and where we don't get to see as much as my friends get to see their dads or their moms or their parents or their families? And, did my best to explain to this young guy what an honor it is to serve and how I'm trying to do my best for others. For 2 years, during that, in 2017 and 2018, and you all know this, we pursued the United States Senate seat, the junior seat in the United States Senate, traveling to all 254 counties, on the road every day that we weren't in Washington, D.C., doing our job in the United States Congress. And then briefly, very briefly, pursued the Democratic nomination for president, had me traveling the country. And so for the last 8 years, we've really missed each other in the O'Rourke household. And lo and behold, this pandemic that has produced so much suffering, so much death, so much harm in this country, also gave us an excuse to be together in our home. Literally on top of each other, all 3 kids, distance learning, online, through the internet, Amy working from home, Beto working from home, spending more time together in the last year than probably we've ever spent together as a family over the last 10 years. Long way to say, my kids and my wife could not wait to get rid of me and to send me on the road. They were more than happy for me to be with you today. I checked in with Amy today. They're all doing well. We're here, though, not so much to get some distance from our families, but because it's democracy that those veterans put their lives on the line for, that so many paid that last full measure of devotion for. When we went to Fort Bliss National Cemetery last Monday, and we're looking at the gravestones, you can read the birth date and the death date of every single person who's buried there. And you could tell some of them were 18 years old, 19 years old, when they perished on that beach in Normandy 77 years and 3 days ago. You could tell that they were 20 years old at the Chosin Reservoir in Korea. You could tell that they were a young man or a young woman in Vietnam, in the Persian Gulf War, in Iraq and Afghanistan. And yet all of them, every single one to a person, they defended not a political party, they defended not a great leader, they defended not a cause or an ideology, but they swore their service to the Constitution, to our democracy, and to all of us, and to each and every generation that would follow theirs. And that sacrifice is very much on my mind, as I hope it is on yours at this moment. We have inherited what they did, what they died for all of us.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
And And just as their service and their sacrifice and their struggle define them for us, it's why we commemorate and pay tribute to them at least every year, some of us every day. What we do right now, given the fact that our democracy is under attack unlike any time in the history of this country, that will define us, each and every one of us, because in a democracy, which, as we know, is government of, by, and for the people, you are the government, I am the government, we are the government. The government is us. And there are no sidelines. You don't sit as a spectator and watch this unfold. When the citadel of our democracy on the 6th of January, not much more than 6 months ago, was successfully invaded, it was breached by insurrectionists, first time that had happened since the War of 1812. 5 people were killed on that day, including a Capitol Police officer who gave his life to defend our democracy. I know you were angry, I know you were outraged, I know you were frustrated, but I don't want you to feel impotent or hopeless. When you see these voter suppression bills wind their ways through state legislatures in Georgia, in Florida, in Iowa, in Montana, in more than 40 different states, and Texas is the epicenter of the absolute worst one, the political scientists have a term for it, they call it dog shit. You can look it up. In a state that is already the toughest in which to vote. In Texas, you cannot use your student ID at UNT or the University of Texas at El Paso or Paul Quinn College to prove who you are at a polling place. But you can use your license to carry a firearm for as long as we need one of those to prove who you are at a polling place. In Texas, over the last 8 years, 750 different polling locations have been closed down and not replaced. And it may not surprise you that those polling place closures were concentrated in the fastest growing Black and Latino neighborhoods. So when you see video images on election day of people lined up for 6 hours deep at Texas Southern University, an historically Black college in Houston, Texas, applaud their courage, but take no pride in that. Instead, that's a mark of shame that anybody has to line up for 6 hours because we closed all the polling locations in their neighborhood and forced them to do that. Imagine how many people said, you know what, the heck with it. I'm not voting today. I'm not waiting in that 6 hour line. Texas has what a 3-judge federal panel described as a racial gerrymander of our political subdivisions. So members of Congress who choose their voters instead of the other way around, they decided, you know what, I bet that Black person is a Democrat. I bet they won't vote for me. I'm going to move them out of the district that I'm running in and put them in one where their vote might not make a meaningful difference. They call it packing and cracking. Move people based on race or ethnicity into districts that diminish their power and the likelihood that they will vote. That's happening in Texas as well. So on top of all that, SB 7 that was introduced this last session, as they've been introduced in 47 different state legislatures, would end Souls to the Polls, which is Sunday morning voting disproportionately used by African Americans across the state of Texas, surgically with unbelievable modern precision, targeting one population in the state of Texas to try to dissuade them from exercising their constitutional right to vote. In addition, those with a disability, you may have a disability, I don't know, it's none of my business. Whether you have bipolar disorder, clinical depression, a traumatic brain injury that you endured in service to this country, that's your business, not mine. And if you want to share that with me, I'm happy to hear it, but you don't have to tell me. Except SB 7, this elections bill, we used to take your word for it when you served our country and you came back and endured an injury in service to all of us, and you said, I need to vote an absentee ballot early because I can't make my way into a polling place. My PTSD does not allow me. My amputation from service does not allow me, and I want to be able to do that by mail. Now, you have to disclose that personal, private, privileged medical information if you are allowed to vote in the democracy that you are willing to give your life for. In addition to all of that, Texas snuck in this provision into the elections bill that would allow our state to overturn lawful, legitimate, small d democratically decided elections simply based on the allegation of fraud. So imagine that you stand in that line to cast your ballot. You have faith in this great democracy that has withstood the test of 245 years. And God only knows how many wars and insurrection attempts, and the big one, the Civil War, that almost rendered us into a different country altogether. You have faith in this democracy, you cast that ballot, and then this state overturns that election, no matter who got more votes, because there was an allegation of fraud. That concerns you and it concerns me, because there are some who alleged fraud in the last election and tried to have the returns overturned in Pennsylvania, in Georgia, in Arizona. Imagine if they did that right here in Texas under the cover of a new law passed in this state. That's what we're up against right now. Here's what they're up against if we decide that we will band together. If we stop the next version of SB 7, those Texas State House Democrats who purchased us some time by walking out on the last day of the legislative session to stop that bill. Their struggle, their political sacrifice, their willingness to serve in that capacity afforded us this opportunity to use a time between now, this very moment, and whenever the governor calls them back into a special session to ensure that we rally behind those House Democrats, to know that they know that we have their backs, to make sure that the Republicans who might represent you here in Ellis County know exactly how you feel about SB 7 and voter suppression, and that you want this country to return to the principle of one person, one vote. Because not only did those men who landed on those beaches in Normandy 77 years and 3 days ago fight for that right, but so did John Lewis and Fannie Lou Hamer and so many other civil rights leaders who risked their lives, and many gave their lives so that we could have the democracy that we have today. I want to make sure that this month that we have before us, we use to its full effect. There is a bill that could very well be passed this month in the United States Senate that is called the For the People Act. The For the People Act, if passed and signed into law by President Biden, will protect voting rights, will stop the voter suppression attempts in the state of Texas, will expand access to the ballot with same-day voter registration, automatic voter registration, making Election Day a national holiday, so there's no asking for time off work because you're not going to work on that day. You're going to the ballot box. It'll reduce the power of money and corporate influence in our politics, and it will set up nonpartisan, non-political, independent redistricting commissions in every state. So no longer can the politicians decide who their voters are. We will decide who our leaders are. It's passed the House of Representatives. Joe Biden has said that he would sign it into law. All we need to do is get it through the Senate. And for those of you who've been watching the news from the Senate, do not despair. I know it seems insurmountable at this moment, even though we have a majority, which is hard for many of us to understand. We have a 51 vote majority, 51 to 50 votes. We have the majority in the House. We have the White House. We literally have those who believe in democracy, not just Democrats, but those who believe in democracy have every lever of power at their disposal. And yet, we know that there are some holdouts who say, for whatever reason, they can't vote for this. They say, I want any voting rights bill to be bipartisan. And who could be against bipartisanship or consensus or common ground or even compromise, as dirty a word as that has become for so many? I believe in that. I'm willing to cede a little to get a little more. But I want you to remember this. The minority party, the Republicans in the Senate, could not even muster 10 votes to investigate the insurrection that took place on the 6th of January, to ensure that we understand what happened, bring those responsible to account, and prevent it from ever happening again. I don't know how much common ground there is there. And I also want you to be reminded of this. The 14th Amendment to the Constitution, passed after the Civil War, was passed on a strict party line vote. The 15th Amendment, passed right after the 14th, passed on a strict party line vote. Sometimes, just sometimes, you've got to do this in the only way that you can. If that means you're only doing it with other members of your own party, so be it. Put the future of this country ahead of any other consideration or virtue right now at this moment. And so, I want you to know this. There was another moment, not too unlike this one, where they were trying to suppress the vote and effectively stop African Americans from being able to vote, especially in the South. We refer to it as Jim Crow. It lasted from the end of Reconstruction to the mid-1960s. And in 1964, Dr. Martin Luther King, Andrew Young paid a visit to President Lyndon Johnson, and they begged of him, please, Mr. President, in states like Texas, you cannot register to vote if you're African American. You cannot cast your ballot. The poll tax, the literacy test, they all apply disproportionately to those who look like us. We need you to intervene. We need the power of the federal government. And President Johnson responded, I would love to help you out because I know that you're right, but I do not have the power to do this. There are these senators who are intransigent. They cannot find the common ground. They cannot muster the will or the courage to vote for this. And so, gentlemen, I'm sorry, you're out of luck. And the story goes, as they left the White House, a dejected Andrew Young turned to Dr. King and asked, what do we do now? And Dr. King responded to Andrew Young, we go out there and we get the president some power. Right. And over the course of the next year, they got the president some power. Folks just like us, in places just like this one, stood up, got out there, raised their voices, and demanded that the country act. In fact, a week before President Johnson convenes a joint session of Congress in 1965, a year after that meeting with Dr. King, to ask them to pass the voting rights bill, John Lewis and a number of other courageous marchers tried to walk from Selma, Alabama to Montgomery to stand up for voting rights, to apply that pressure to the president, to give him some power. And as you know, John Lewis, as he attempted to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge, was beaten within an inch of his life. Many others also came to physical harm for just standing up for themselves as human beings and citizens in their very own democracy. And those images, broadcast across the country and the world, shocked the conscience of the country and engaged the president and those before him in that joint session finally to act. And in that same year, they passed the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which ushered in the first true multiracial democracy in American history. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, we have done this before and we can do it again. So are you ready to give the president some power? We've got to call on him. We've got to ask him to do everything he can, make this his number one priority, and whether we have to gold plate every freeway in West Virginia or whatever it takes, we got to get the job done for this country, because there is no more important job before us. Last thing, and then we're going to turn this microphone over to you and listen to you, your ideas, your questions, the points that you want to make. We need an insurance policy. If we are unsuccessful in stopping the next version of SB 7, that elections bill in Texas, if we are unsuccessful in compelling the president to use his power to pass the For the People Act, which would safeguard and expand our democracy, we still need to fight in Texas, even against longer odds and an ever more rigged system. And this is how we do it. We each go down, not all at once, but individually, to the Ellis County Elections Department, and we sign up to become a volunteer deputy registrar. The cool kids refer to it as VDR. You can become a VDR right here. It won't take you much more than 10 minutes, 15 at the max. I've been able to do it in 5, but I've done this now in 6 or 7 counties, so I'm getting the hang of it. But once you are certified as a VDR, you can register anyone who's unregistered as long as they are eligible and meet the requirements. You can knock on your neighbor's door. You can start up a conversation in line at the grocery store. You can go down to the food bank, and as you're helping out there, talk to those customers who come in to get some nutrition and calories and make sure they're involved in the political process. It's a great conversation starter for the single ladies and men out there. This is a way that you meet other people, and it forms a powerful bond that can lead to some beautiful relationships. But what it also does is it engages the more than 7 million of our fellow Texans, many of them right here in Ellis County, who didn't participate in the 2020 election, even though they were eligible to do so. Millions of them not yet registered to vote. So if we do not wait until 2022 or 2024, if we decide we're serious about it and are going to get after it now in 2021, I believe that we can bring the numbers to bear, even if we cannot get these bills passed in the Senate and stopped in Texas, to win elections. And then we replace those who do not believe in democracy with those who do. And then everything you care about, whether it's the quality of your child's school, or the pay that his teacher receives, or the ability to afford health care and fill a prescription, see a doctor, take your kid to a therapist, the effort to confront climate change before it's too late, whatever matters most to you, it all becomes more possible when we have those in power who listen to us. And at the end of the day, in what is purported to be the world's greatest democracy, that's what it's about. So please, keep the faith and keep up the fight, and let's do this together. Thank you for coming out here today. Really appreciate it. So, my partner in this adventure from Texas, we just can't point it at the speaker, is Cynthia Cano, who's helped to bring us all together today. She's got a microphone in her hand. If you raise yours, she'll bring it to you, and we'll see if we can figure out the feedback with the microphone. We don't want to blow out anybody's ears.
All right, I'm making my way around back over here. So our first question.
I can't thank you enough for your tireless, just so sincere, continuing your battle and helping all us Texans, all the U.S. citizens. You're quite a godsend. So,
Yeah.
I keep hearing hints of it, but I would really love to hear you. I know this is not what you're talking about, but it is in a big Texas governor. Any chance?
I've made this case as best I can that the fight before us is this fight to vote in our democracy. And here's how it's related to your question. No matter who runs for governor or lieutenant governor or land commissioner or county commissioner, if we don't have free and fair elections in this country, if the results can literally be overturned upon whim based on an allegation, then it might not matter who runs, and it might not matter how great a candidate they are. And so I want to make sure that we see this fight through to the finish. It could not be more important. I mean, imagine if, and not to compare any of us to the generations that preceded ours, but imagine if in 1964 and 1965, they gave up on that fight to pursue something else. We might not have the 65 Voting Rights Act, the 64 Civil Rights Act. Let's make sure that we get this done. And to set your expectations and to make sure that you have a finish line in mind, this is not an endless race or an endless journey or an endless struggle. The Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, has said that he will bring the For the People Act to the floor of the Senate this month. So at the end of this month. So we have not much more than a month before us to do this work, to go all out with all that we've got from all of us. And then after we do that, I'd love to think about how I can work with you to better serve this state in one capacity or another. So thank you for asking. Appreciate that.
Hi there. Hi, Dada. Jeez. All right. Trying my. Okay. All right. So the biggest issue I feel that's facing this country right now is police brutality, and maybe what can we do to stop it. The best solution I see would be to end qualified immunity for police officers who abuse their position. So, and even it has Democrat and Republican support, so it can pass. All right. So, what steps should we take in order to have comprehensive criminal justice reform so that we don't need any more George Floyds or Ahmaud Arbery's or Tamir Rice or all of those people who lost their lives due to police brutality and police officers abusing their position?
Thanks for being here. And thinking about North Texas, we'd add Botham Jean and Tatiana Jefferson and so many others. The solutions you proposed, I believe, are the right ones. Ending the immunity that police officers enjoy right now, even when they break the law, and when they abuse the extraordinary power that they hold, life and death power, over those that they are sworn to protect and to serve. My belief is that in pursuing this, and if we're successful, not only do we keep our fellow citizens that much safer, but we also support the good police officers who do not want to be tarnished with the actions of the bad police officers for whom, when there are no consequences and when there is no accountability, they are connected and joined with. And it becomes even harder to do an already incredibly difficult job. And I can only imagine how tough that job is, especially right now. And I think we all agree how important a job that is. But it is so important, we want to make sure that we do it right. We want to ensure that there are the highest standards and that there are consequences and accountability when officers fail to meet those standards. As you probably know, the George Floyd Act was introduced in this last Texas legislative session, and as you also probably know, it did not pass. However, for whatever cold comfort it provides us, some provisions within it did pass, and as you mentioned, enjoyed Republican as well as Democratic support. So we're making progress, and that progress is only possible because of those who, like John Lewis, were willing to put their bodies out there last summer to call attention to what happened and to call the focus of those in positions of public trust who could actually do something about them. And Texas was not alone in introducing this legislation. We saw progress made at the municipal level, at the state level across the country, and even a little bit of progress, especially in the House of Representatives, in our federal government. You ask what we do next. We've got to keep up this fight. And if there's any lesson that I learn over and over again, no matter how painful, it is that progress in this country is always possible, but it's always frustratingly slow. We ultimately get it right or close to right, but it takes that kind of marching and demonstration, call to action, and replacing those in power who fail to heed the public call. That's how you get the '64 Civil Rights Act and the 1965 Voting Rights Act. So please stay in the fight with us. And for those of you who have not signed in with the Ellis County Democrats yet, or Powered by People, sign in on both of those, because what we can do individually is important, but what we do collectively together as a group is unstoppable. And we've got to be unstoppable if we're going to get this done. So thank you for the question.
Hi, I'm Henry, and very unpopular opinion, but I do not think the For the People Act will pass if it is introduced in this term, and this is why. So we are on the brink of a 50-50, you said 51 with Kamala Harris. I don't think it's going to pass because a little guy from West Virginia doesn't want it to pass. Manchin doesn't want it to pass because, as you said, it eliminates dark money. And most of his campaign come from two people, the Roque brothers, who want to keep centrist Democrats, and there's also one from his daughter, who owns a pharmaceutical company, and she's just racist. My basic thing is that, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think he's going to snap at the last minute and join with them, or should we have to wait in the next midterms to maybe elect another Democrat so then it can be a 50-50 and make sure that the For the People Act will be passed? Your thoughts?
I think this is a pretty sharp analysis on the situation, and it's what makes the movie that they make about this year down the road even that much more interesting. Like the best movies, the odds just get longer as the heroes make their way. They're never going to overcome this challenge or this villain or this threat to them. And it sure feels like that in this country for our democracy at this moment. You describe what is perilously close to an impossible situation for us to win. However, I'm reminded of the fact, and we've all been through this, that with partners in your lives, whether it's the folks you live with or a business partner or someone that you're trying to do something with, very often you or the other person will walk away from the deal. You know what, Beto, I've had it with you. I just can't stand this anymore. I'm gonna go off and do something else. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they come back. You reach out and you say, you know what, maybe I didn't approach this the right way, and you know what, I wasn't listening closely enough to your concerns. Come on back, let's work through this again and see if we can get there. That's one thing that should give us a little bit of hope, you know, not anything to hang all of our action on, but a little bit of hope. The other is the extraordinary power that the president possesses. I love Joe Biden. I endorse Joe Biden. I got to know Joe Biden over the course of the campaign. I treated him to a fantastic Whataburger meal just up the road in Dallas when he was campaigning through this state. I know he's a good man. I know he wants to do the right thing. But out of love, I will say this publicly, he's not doing enough right now. And if he truly wants this to pass, then he will put all of his muscle, all of his effort, all of his heart, all of his brain into this. And I think that can be extraordinarily compelling for the senator from West Virginia. In Arizona. Senator Sinema in Arizona. Because you asked another question, which was an excellent one. You know, if Senator Manchin is not persuaded, if we cannot get to either 60 votes or 51 votes to change the filibuster, then we just have to wait until the midterm elections. The problem is, after Joe Biden became the first Democrat to win the state of Georgia as a Democratic nominee in 2020 in like 30 years, after Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff pulled off surprise Senate victories in January of this month, literally the state of Georgia changed the rules. And all those victories were possible because of people like you, like all of us, who went out there and did the hard work, registering voters, persuading voters, not necessarily just to vote for Democrats, but to vote at all. But after all that hard work and all those hard-won victories, they changed the rules of the state. They literally rushed through a voter suppression bill not too different than ours, only maybe a little more cruel. You cannot, when someone's waiting 6 hours in line to vote, you cannot by law hand them a cold bottle of water. That is literally against the law in the state of Georgia. And they're doing that clearly because they fear future Democratic victories. And I think it should cause us to wonder how possible those future Democratic victories are going to be in the midterms in 2022 with these new rules. That's why this bill, the For the People Act, is, in my opinion, make or break. And it doesn't do a great job of answering your question because everything you said is absolutely true. This looks pretty damn close to impossible, but there is still a chance. And in Texas, or at least in the O'Rourke household, if there's a chance, we'll drive a truck through it. And we'll do it with all of our friends. And if we're going to go down, and I'm not saying we are, I'm going to go down fighting. As Jack Sanders, who plays a mean baseball game, would tell us, if you're at the plate, no matter how great that pitcher is, no matter what kind of batter you are, if you're going to go down, you're going to go down swinging. And maybe, just maybe, you're going to make contact and get on base, right? So this is not a time for weak knees or despair or throwing in the towel. Because if we do that, we're throwing in the towel on democracy, and we can't be about that. So commit yourself to this, and everything you said is true. And know this, it's not going to be easy. No button to push, no tweet to send out, no Facebook message that's going to compel anybody to do anything. It is going to be your action, your commitment, the conversations you have at the doorstep of your neighbor that makes this possible. So thank you for asking the question. Really good.
Right behind you, and we have time for a few more. Sorry, to your right.
Hi, my name is Chandra. One of the things, I just kind of want to make a statement more so than a question. As you look around at everyone, one of the things I want to make people aware of, or kind of just keep it in the back of your head. Number one, understand everybody does not use social media. I am 54. I have no social media. Where I get my information is the news, other friends. So it's that kind of thing. So when Beto talks about talking to your neighbor next door at the grocery store, that's very important. I actually live in Tarrant County, but I'm on the cusp of Dallas and Tarrant. So as a VDR, I register for both counties. Now, people with grandparents, parents, talk to the PTAs. Look at all these kids that are 17 that will be registered and eligible to vote midterm. Start talking to that principal. See about being able to register in a government economics class. Kids need to understand this is part of your generation. One of the things also, make sure, I volunteered this past election. There's an organization called Ride Share to Vote, the number 2. That organization, we've been steadily trying to get the word out. They will take anybody to the polls to vote. It's all volunteer work, so we need to spread the word. If you're registered, you need a ride, call this number. Do the app. You've got a couple of different ways that you can get a ride to the polls. Because sometimes we get people registered and then they don't know how to get to the poll. They're cutting it off where you can't take a bus load, but as a ride share to vote, you're taking one person at a time to the poll.
I love this. And I got to tell you, what you started off by saying about social media, if there was some device that measured all of our happiness, I think you would be so much happier than any of us who are on social media. So kudos to you. I'm jealous. This is the best point. You all probably know this. Some may not. Under Texas state law, every high school principal is supposed to do their best to register every age eligible student to register to vote in their schools. It by and large does not happen. It's not enforced for obvious, understandable reasons. Those in power do not want those without power to have some voting power, and so they make no effort to register them. But you can walk over to your nearest high school, ask to meet with the principal and say, hey, I know there's this state law, and not judge them, not challenge them, not quarrel with them. Say, but I know you've got your hands full. You have nowhere near the funding you need to make this work the way it should here. You've got a lot of problems on your plate. I am a volunteer deputy registrar. I can register the students in this class. And don't come, by the way, as a Democrat or a Republican or anything. Just come as a taxpayer in that independent school district and say, I'd love to help. I'll come with 2 or 3 other volunteers. We'll set up a table at lunchtime. We'll be in the cafeteria. We won't pass out any literature. We'll just get your students registered to vote. You would be surprised the takers that you will find. We've got a friend in Webb County, which is Laredo, Texas on the border, Leti Trejo. She, over the course of 2 weeks, registered 900 new high school students just in that one county. 900. That's going to make a difference in the next election. So to that list of action items that we just made, let's add that one. Let's go meet our neighborhood-friendly high school principal and offer to help them register the voters in their schools. Thank you for offering the suggestion. That was great.
Hello, thank you for being here. I am Mark Clayton. I'm also from Tarrant County. I am, along with my 3 colleagues here, we are all judicial candidates in Tarrant County on the 22 ballot. And Tarrant County is much like Ellis County in leadership and politics and those who hold those seats at this time. So we are really stepping out there and I think doing a great thing. I will introduce Lisa Pamplin. She's running for Tarrant County Criminal Court number 5. Crystal Gaden, she's running for Family Court 324th. Ebony Turner, she's running for County Criminal Court number 6. And I, Mark Clayton, I'm running for Tarrant County Criminal Court number 7. And I just wanted to say we would really, really, really appreciate it if you stuck your name at the top of that ballot to help get voters out. We as judges, we are on the bottom of the ballot. And by the time voters make it down, or I think we lose close to 50% of the voters that come out. But I believe that if we had a stronger Democratic ticket, you know, you're a very strong candidate, but on down the ballot, we need to have more strong people in the other roles or seats as well. So if we're filling it up with a good Democratic ticket, we collectively, like you said, can really make the changes necessary. So if you will. and after this, if you have just a few moments, if we can chat with you before you take off.
Would love to. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And first of all, thank you all for putting yourself out there for public service, campaigning, and it's as you said, it's not an election that gets enough attention. And it doesn't get enough votes. A lot of people drop off the ballot, especially now that we don't have straight ticket voting in the state of Texas. And so this is a very tough road that you're on, but it's an important one. And we had a great question about criminal justice earlier. This is criminal justice. In 2018, 17 African-American women were elected to the courts in Harris County. That changed the face of criminal justice in the largest county in the state. So we need to make sure that when we're talking about registering voters, when we engage with voters to remind them about what's important in this election, that we're talking about your races. Because you're where the rubber meets the road for many people in their day-to-day life. They may not feel the decisions that the president or the member of Congress or even their state representative makes, but if they're before you, if they're in that court, if they're down on their luck, that's where they're going to see their government. And so I thank you for doing this, and just know that we're with you. Thanks. Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question. I have 4 more, and I already have picked the 4.
Hi, I'm actually from Dallas County, but I'm from Waxahachie, so.
Here, let me give you this microphone and see if that works.
So thank you for being in my hometown. You mentioned empowering, giving Biden more power, and I've been thinking a lot about like that because we're on the same page on this. I feel like we need a hitting the streets kind of women's march, kind of George Floyd protest kind of moment in America, and I don't feel that. I'm with the feds up in Dallas County. I am in it, but I don't feel that swelling up, and I just wondered if you did, and what we can do to cause that, to give Joe Biden some power.
Yeah, I really
on
love
this issue specifically.
Yeah, and Cynthia, I don't know if you heard her say that she's with the feds. I know you were trying to get in touch with them last night. You connected? Okay, awesome. Thanks to the Funky East Dallas Democrats, one of these great grassroots organizations that's making a huge difference. I think our challenge, and yours, if you want to take it up, is organizing those efforts organically in each of our communities. After the murder of George Floyd, so many young people in more than 1,000 cities across this country, including in Vidor, Texas, organized marches and protests. They didn't wait for the politician, the office holder, the person in power to tell them what to do. They got up there, they got after it, and they said, hey, this is so important, it cannot wait. And I don't care if I have permission, I'm just going to do this. I think we need that. You're absolutely right. We need this at this moment. When we were in Midland was our first stop, and you all be surprised that we had 150 or more folks come out in Midland. Young man stood up. His name was Rod, and he said, "I want to put my body on the line. I don't want Rod to get hurt. I don't want any harm to come to him." But he to this point about social media, he doesn't want to be tweeting about it. And he said, "I'll do the phone calls that you asked me to make, Beto, but that just feels really insufficient to the task at hand. I want to be out there." And so Rod, as he stood up and said that at the meeting, we challenged him, and he said, "Okay, I'm going to organize the march in Midland and Odessa." And we got everybody's contact information just as we're doing today. And so when he leads that march, there are going to be some people who are with him on that effort. So if you're willing to do that in East Dallas, if someone here is willing to do that in Waxahachie, if I'm willing to join whoever wants to lead that in El Paso, I do think that's how they're going to take note. And we've got to do that in this month. And your question is going to prompt me to think about how our 20,000 members, empowered by people just in the state of Texas alone, can converge or, semi-independently across the state, be taking mass action. And maybe we pick a day this month before that vote is called in the Senate, and each of us in our own way chooses to do that. Let me just do a poll here. If there were a march like that in Waxahachie, would you all be willing to join it? Yeah, I see a lot of hands up. So let's do that. And if you're interested in leading that, I'd love Cynthia, who you all know because she's got that microphone. I'd love for you to talk to Cynthia, and maybe Cynthia going forward, we find somebody in every community, some people in every community who want to lead that march, and we support them. We've got a wonderful mailing list of everyone who supported us in Ellis, we'll shoot them a note. Hey, Joe Smith from Waxahachie is going to lead this march. We want you to be with him. Here are the details. And then we do it in Denton County, in Dallas County, in Tarrant County, in Collin County. So I like that idea. And Jack, I remember talking to Jack about, what do we do in these meetings? What's going to come out of them? And Jack said, well, what if there was a march? What if we were literally on the move out of these meetings? So maybe that's the way that we're on the move coming through these meetings. So thank you for prompting this discussion. And Cynthia, if you can take that on, or if you want to assign somebody to receive the incoming on that, I think this is something that we try to help organize right now. Sound good?
Absolutely.
Okay,
please
great.
come and see me. And then also we have these very amazing volunteers walking around with the clipboards. I know some of you came in late. If you have not signed up, please make sure you do that. That's the best way for us to stay connected to y'all. So please make sure you sign up before you leave.
Great.
Again, thank you for coming. When you run for governor and you win, will you support allowing us to vote yes or no for legalized gambling? It's already here. You know, everybody's kidding themselves, but the people in power haven't figured out yet how in the hell to stuff their own pockets.
Yeah.
That's my personal belief.
Yeah. It makes sense to me. You have what are supposed to be independent nations within the state of Texas, like the Alabama Coshada or the Tigua in El Paso and Isleta, where I live. And unlike independent sovereign nations in other parts of this country, they have been denied in the state of Texas their ability to offer this to willing, consenting adults who want to participate. I'd love for us to honor their right to be able to do that, and to acknowledge that this is already taking place in the state of Texas, sanctioned by the state right now. You already have this legalized. It's only that the state enjoys a monopoly on the gambling that is taking place right now. So that seems to make a lot of sense to me. Thanks for asking the question. Appreciate it. Yeah.
All right, we have 3 more left.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for taking the time to come to little old Waxahachie. My thing is this: what words would you give to this crowd today concerning bridging our racial divide? Because like the young man asked over there about the violence, we are divided racially. And not all of it is over with the Republicans. So we as Democrats, we as people, white, black, blue, brown, whatever race you're in, we have to be recognized as people, and we have a vote and a voice. And in order for us to come together, we have to get together. So what words of encouragement, if that's what they would be, would you give today addressing that issue? Thank you so much.
I think you started us in the right direction. I think you offered us some inspiration. You did. If we're going to come together, we've got to get together, and we got to bring people together. And I think that's the start of it. Even better, I think knowing one another's story. You know, I want to know your story individually, and I want to, if you all haven't read it yet, The Warmth of Other Suns, or Cast by Isabel Wilkerson, she talks about employing a radical empathy. Let's get past tolerating each other. Let's get to really trying to understand the lives that others have lived. And through that, good things come. I was so struck by the fact that it was only Joe Biden who was the first president to commemorate 100 years after the Tulsa massacre that killed at least, because we will never know the true story, because the story was not allowed to be told for decades after it happened, at least 300 African American citizens killed in Greenwood, in Black Wall Street in Tulsa, by their white neighbors who could not stand their wealth, their success, their pursuit of equal treatment under the law as written in the 14th Amendment, and so killed them, and then tried to extinguish their history from the books. What those of us who've been paying attention have also understood was that unfortunately Tulsa was not the exception. This took place all across the country, and not just in the South, not just in Oklahoma, not just in Texas, not just in Mississippi, but throughout the country. When we bring this back to democracy,
You know, the last brief flourish of multiracial democracy was during Reconstruction. And in Texas, you had some counties like Fort Bend County near Houston, where half of the elected leadership was African American in the 1870s. Washington County, where Brandon is, much the same, until white terrorists used violence, literally killing black voters, stealing the ballot boxes, and this is why the phrase overturning elections rings in a way that should worry every one of us. Overturned lawfully decided elections to remove the black elected officials and replace them with white, at the time, Democrats. And in a strange echo that resonates right now, the United States Congress was outraged. In fact, they called what happened in Washington County, Texas in the 1880s, the outrage, the Washington County outrage. Panels were convened. A voting rights bill was passed in the House of Representatives, which the President of the United States said he would sign. And it goes to the Senate, where Republicans, the party of democracy at the time in 1890, said that they had or did have a majority to pass this into law. And it was held up on a filibuster and was defeated. And there ended the first attempt at multiracial democracy in the United States until 1965. If history doesn't repeat itself, it certainly rhymes, and we hear that rhyme right now. So understanding our history so that we don't repeat it, so that we understand one another, I think that begins some of the reconciliation, and I think it begins the end of these policies that have produced so much suffering, so much devastation, so much death, and so much inequity in this country. 10 times the wealth in white America as there is in black America. Our public schools more segregated today than on the eve of Brown versus Board in 1954. This state puts more people in prison than any other state in the country. This country puts more in prison than any other country in the world. And most of those in prison are black and brown right now, arrested solely based on the color of their skin, because only black people in America, more likely than not, are stopped and frisked and arrested for possessing something that's legal in most of the rest of the country right now. Cannabis, marijuana, pot, whatever you want to call it. Who's going to be the last person, likely of color, to languish in a jail or a prison in Texas for possessing that? So understanding that affects drug control policy, affects our elections, affects criminal justice, affects access to health care in a state that is the maternal mortality epicenter of America, 2 to 3 times as deadly for an African American woman. Affects everything in every one of our lives. But I don't know that we get there without understanding one another. And part of the reason I wanted to be here in person and be able to listen to you all directly is it begins when we come together, as you just said. So I'm in for the distance with you, if you are as well, willing to listen, learn, be part of the solution. Thank you.
Mr. Governor, I'm Bishop Larry Jefferson. Some of you may or you may not know my son Omar Jawar, who started the Heal America tour and then passed away with COVID just a few months ago. So he's a great man here in America. Now, I've been in this battle since the late 50s. I was around Eisenhower, and I'm passing to my mid-70s. Now, what I like to say is, concerning the racial divide, I think it would be a good idea if we began to call ourselves who we are. Like, if you're from Scandinavia, you're a Scandinavian American. Because if you are Irish, you're Irish American. Because if you keep saying you're white, then it separates us and it causes a fear that you're going to be extinct if any kind of color touches the white. Now, nobody can take Scandinavian from you if you're Scandinavian. I don't care how white and light-skinned my children get, nobody can stop them from being African American. So I think we can start with this eliminating this racial divide if we come to ourselves and understand that nobody is born a white race. You're from somewhere. So that's really what you are, and we should start identifying ourselves as such. Now, that part of my sermonette being said, I would like very much to do all that I can to help push you to the governorship. With your resistance, with your heels stuck into that, pushing, because we need it. Now I've seen Ann Richards, Bill Clement, I've seen them all. Now, we need a governor that is a governor for all the people. A governor for all the people. One that will pass legislation that will help everybody and that does not recognize so-called black people or white people. I'm African American, but I was born and raised right here. Well, you can't take African out of me. It's the same thing wherever you were born or wherever your ancestors were. I can't take that out of you. But if somebody black had married your mother, then you would have to say you're black, which is nonsense. You still be Scandinavian American. All right, thank you.
Pastor Jefferson. Thank you for everything you said, and everyone joins me in telling you how sorry we are that you lost your son this year, and how grateful we are for his fight for all of us, which is clear that's what he devoted his life to. And point taken about how we treat one another, how we talk about one another, how we even refer about ourselves. And I think what you just said changed the way that I'm going to be talking about this going forward. So pay attention, listen, because I'm paying attention, and listen to you because you're so right. And I would love if in this great democracy you didn't have a party, you didn't have people in power who were trying to draw people out or write people off or keep people from voting solely based on where they're from or the color of their skin, which is exactly what is happening in Texas and through so much of America right now. And I'm so glad that what you just said is being transmitted on this live stream so others not in Ellis County, not at this park right now, can hear that. And so just as with so many others who are here right now, I'm looking forward to being in this fight with you. And if I do run, I would love to do it with you because you've got so much energy and so much power in you. And I would love that for the cause. So thank you. Thank you.
This is our last question to your left. Right here. Sorry.
There we go.
You give me the last talk, huh? My name is James Washington, and I'm a member of Ellis County Democrats. As an African American, I'm very frustrated. As a veteran, I'm very frustrated. As a Christian, I'm very frustrated. As an American, I'm very frustrated. But what really gets me going right now is the events of January 6th.
Yes,
Can
sir.
you give us some insight on what's really going down as to why these folks are trying to tell us not to believe what we saw with our own eyes?
Yeah.
You know, there are those who understand history better than I do, and I'll gladly cede the floor to them after I say this to correct me or add to what I'm about to say, because I want to make sure to get this right. People refer to what former President Trump said about the 2020 election as the big lie. And that's a very charged, weighted phrase. And it means something in the history of this country. It means something in the history of the world. Adolf Hitler in 1923 leads an insurrection attempt in Germany, which at that time was a representative form of government. It was a republic. And that coup attempt, that insurrection, that sedition that he helped to organize and lead was defeated, as we know from what followed, only temporarily. And it was predicated on a big lie that Jewish Germans had betrayed the country in the First World War, had forced Germany at Versailles to settle for a shameful peace that left the country weak, and that they were somehow to blame. And the reason it was a big lie because it was repeated over and over again, and no matter how factually incorrect the repetition by those in positions of power, because it was not just Adolf Hitler and the brown shirts, but it was those who enjoyed positions of public trust within that republic. People began to believe it. And it took on the power, though it was untrue, of a truth. And within a decade, after he is jailed for that insurrection attempt, he rises to the highest position of power within Germany and absolutely destroys that republic and that form of government to enter into a tyranny and a dictatorship that brought about perhaps the greatest level of unspeakable evil that the world has ever known. And I understand full well how dangerous it is to talk about it. This is the analogy of last resort. You never compare anything to what happened under Adolf Hitler and the Nazis and Europe, and to the 6 million Jews who perished as a result. But history doesn't afford us anything comparable to this moment like that one. And this big lie that the president told from the biggest microphone in the land, that was then repeated by your junior senator, Ted Cruz, and others who are in positions of influence and power across the land. Senators, there are only 100 of them. This is the wealthiest, most powerful country in the history of the world. On the planet today, there are the 100 most powerful people on it, with the exception of the president. Those powerful people repeating that big lie over and over and over again. How else do you explain tens of millions of our fellow Americans who still believe that Joe Biden did not win that election, neither the popular vote nor the electoral college vote? How do you explain hundreds with Trump political banners and Confederate battle flags storming the Capitol, running roughshod over those police, killing one of them in the process, 4 others dying along the way? That's why I believe that we should take no comfort, not a single one of us, in the fact that that insurrection was temporarily thwarted, or that Joe Biden on the 20th of that same month was eventually sworn in to office. That is not the end of things.
Right.
It only marks a point in time along the way in this epic battle that defines us once and forever. And my feeling is that if there's not accountability for those insurrectionists individually, if there's not accountability for the person who inspired them in the first place, the former president, if there's not accountability for those who use their positions of public trust like Ted Cruz did to inspire that insurrection, and then after it was over to vote to still overturn that election, then it's very possible that, like Germany, that other great Western republic and democracy, we will lose this form of government, what Abraham Lincoln called the last best hope of earth. So, I warned you earlier, this fight is not going to be easy. And it's going to be more than phone calls and tweeting and texting. It's going to be following our leaders here into the streets and marching and calling attention to this and demanding justice until justice is served. Until then, this remains a mortal, existential threat to our country. So I don't think we're anywhere close to the end of this. I am just as frustrated as you are, just as angry, and I think hearing you, just as resolved to make sure that we see this through, get justice, stop this moving insurrection that is still in motion at this moment, and get our country back. I'm with you in this. Thank you for what you said. Really appreciate it. Es todo. All right. Waxahachie, thank you for being with us today. So grateful to each and every one of you. Looking forward to seeing you again. We're in this all the way. Adios.